I thought for a second that he was going to be taller than me.
No, I'm a short guy.
Sorry about that. This is what happens when you deal with modern technology. The desert heat and modern technology don't always mix side by side. But I'm here with Coach Lee again, and we were talking about we're talking about young ladies playing high school football. And you mentioned you do have one young lady who is playing. What was her name again?
Kaylee Henderson.
Kaylee Henderson, and we'll keep an eye out and see what she could do with the Lions. But take us to through the team. We know about Cameron Lee. We know about Jordan Wallace. We'll get to those guys in a little bit. But talk to us. One of the things that you've always prided yourself on, and a lot of coaches take pride in, is the offensive line. Talk to us a little bit about the big guys that are going to open the holes for Jordan, that are going to block for Cameron and get the job done in the trenches for the Cathedral City Lions this year.
Well, starting out, we have our starting center. It's Danny Morales. He's a 2-year starter. Started last year. He was a CIF wrestler, league champion in wrestling, and so he's third in CIF in wrestling. So he's a really, really good athlete. You might be what you call undersized for a center. He only weighs like 215 pounds, but because of that, he moves exceptionally well. He scrambles. He's good with his hands and with his feet, and he kind of sets the tone for our offensive line. We're actually blessed to have 3 starters returning. Danny. We also have our guard, Mario Gonzalez. He's another starter returning, a 2-year starter. He plays guard for us. Like this. And, we fed him to the fire, and, it was a learning process, but, you could see the progress, and by the end of the season, he was playing pretty good football. So, he's another guy returning, and we expect the big things out of him this year. He's a junior, got another year with him, so he's gotten a lot better. So we have a couple of new guys that we've kind of blended in with those guys, but having 3 senior returning starters, that's a plus. Your guys who, when you have your line calls and different things like that, these guys, they understand it. They've been in the system 2-3 years. They can pick things up, and we expect those guys actually to lead us. I mean, like you said, regardless of how good your athletes are behind them, you can't do anything if you can't open some holes up front. I mean, it all starts up front, and you can't say that enough. It all starts up front, and on both sides of the ball, actually. Also, as far as offensively, we also have a junior named James Green, plays wide receiver and defensive back. He had a really, really good summer, great summer. Did real well, some passing league stuff. He's just really, really athletic kid. He's a 22-foot long jumper as a sophomore. I mean, he's a really athletic kid, and he started both ways for us last year, and he was kind of deer in the headlights, as a sophomore, but now he's a junior, and he's starting to realize, hey, you know what? I can insert my will and enforce my will and make an impact on the game, and he's starting to realize that. So, we expect some big things out of him offensively also.
Obviously, the big shoes to fill are going to be the tailback position. You have Jordan Wallace. You have had the opportunity to coach his brother, Orlando. Maybe not the exact, carbon copy, but there's some talent there. Has there been some known advice that Orlando has passed along to his younger brother when he took over the tailback position? And what have you kind of instilled in Jordan as a tailback to kind of carry this team? Because it's no secret, you over the past when you've had quarterbacks like Davin Lyle and other wide receiver threats, but you've always been kind of a factory of tailbacks at Cathedral City. What's the scheme going to be for Jordan, and what kind of advice have you given to the young tailback?
Well, basically with him, as far as his brother giving advice, his brother's telling, his brother, Orlando's kind of a guy, short with words. He says, you got to do you, and they're brothers, so they kind of get and understand what that means. But, like you said, there are some similarities there. They both have the ability to make people miss in space. And one of the things is Jordan had a really pretty good season in track, made it to CIF in track in the hurdles, and he's worked really, really hard on his speed. He's gotten stronger. So some of the runs last year where you see a guy bring him down, or a guy get a hands on his legs, things like that, he's going to run through some of those tackles, and he's also going to run away from some people. And one of the things Jordan does, as well as anybody else out there, is he can find those seams in a defense. He can get skinny in the hole and find those seams, and where you look like there's nothing there, and he just gets in there, and the next thing you know, he's popped up and he's gaining for 7 or 8 yards. So you're going to see him finishing a lot of runs that last year maybe he didn't get a chance to finish for whatever reason. Yeah, strength, speed, those different things, but now he's able to hit that seam and go, and I expect him to have a really, really big season. He's a very, very talented athlete, and he's really passionate. That's one thing. He's very passionate. He's the kind of guy who, we're not playing well, he'll get in the huddle and scream at everybody, say, give me the football, give me the football, give me the football. And, you love that in a kid. You want that fire. So he's doing a great job there, and we expect a lot out of him.
The only time I ever made Coach Lee flinch, I moved to the right, and he bumped him out of frame there. Phil, who's directing now, is kind of freaking out behind the camera, though. I was going to talk a little bit about Cameron Lee. He's your quarterback, but he's making your transition from cornerback from last year. So obviously we know it looks like he's going to get the job done under center. It sounds like you have a great offensive line in front of them. So let's flip to the other side of the ball. Let's talk about your defensive backfield, how you're going to keep the ball out of the end zone. It's good when you have a guy that's going to be on the field almost the entire game, leading your defense, especially at a cornerback position that is keen on taking the ball away. What has Cameron's summer been like on the defensive side of the ball? And talk to us a little bit about the black hole defense of the Mighty Lions.
Actually, defensively, if you look at the strength of our defense, it's the back end. It's the back four. Our secondary is, I mean, obviously we have good athletes in the secondary. We have actually Cameron is actually playing free safety this year. We put him in the middle of the defense. You figure when you have an athlete of that caliber, you want to put him in the middle where he can impact things instead of being locked into one side of the field. He's in the middle of the football field. You know, he can roam from right to left. He can play hash mark to hash mark. He's got the range. He's got the speed and everything else. And like you said, it's like having another coach out there. He's type of a captain type, and he understands things and the concepts in the defense, and he can read it. Jordan Wallace will be playing strong safety for us. We also have Brian Sanchez, who plays safety. In our corner, James Green. James Green made All-League as a sophomore last year at cornerback. And also on the other side, we have Joshua Lee, which is actually my son. He's playing cornerback also. And we have Timothy Miller and, let's see, Moses Ramirez. I mean, in the secondary, I'm not saying that, I'm not making any predictions or anything, but the strength of our defense right now is actually the secondary. We have some guys coming back up front. We have Devin Wyckoff at nose tackle. He was ineligible last year. He transferred from another school, came in. He was ineligible last year, got his grades up, worked real hard in the weight room, and he's a load. He's just a load. He just, he brings it. He's going to help us out defensively. Our linebacking core, we're trying to figure out the three. We've got three guys that, Patrick Schmidt and Isaac Reyes and Jeremy Salas, and we've got 3 or 4 guys that we're kind of rotating in and out, trying to find a solid group. But, the hope is high school football, especially out in this area, is nobody really slings it too much. So the idea is we want people to throw the football. I mean, if that means, because if they have to throw the football, that means you're stopping the run. And if we can commit to the run, stopping the run, we want you to challenge our secondary. That's what I want. I want to see that because, like I said, we have a chance to be pretty good back there if everybody dials in and does what they need to do. We have the amount of athleticism you need. And it's going to be interesting to see if our philosophy is don't have a lot of size. That means all 11 guys got to get to the football. You got to run to the ball, run to the ball, run to the ball, run to the ball, run to the ball. I mean, if anybody came to our practice and they see me on defense side, I'm screaming like a lunatic. Sprint to the football, sprint to the football. Everybody's flowing to the football. So we got to get 11 guys there, get there fast, be angry when you get there, and go from there.
And he's not joking around. He has instilled that on his other coaches as well. Because we saw earlier, we've got the frosh off practice going on right now. We saw a little sweep to the right, and one of the kids put the ball on the ground, and they thought the play was over. And you hear the coaches screaming, "Ball, ball, ball!" The ball's on the ground. So you've instilled that thought process in your coaches as well on the frosh off side. Switching gears real quick. I mean, usually we would talk a little bit about special teams here, but I think it kind of speaks for itself that you're going to have a lot of your skill position players making the switch over to kick return and coverage team as well. Let's talk about the schedule. You're losing CV, but you are going to play them in week 0, but you are gaining Shadow Hills as a league opponent. You've already kind of had an opportunity to play them last year in a league game. From a scheduling standpoint, really not much has changed per se. Let's go game by, at least I know you're a game-by-game coach like everybody else. Coach Davis down in Coachella, he's kind of having a kind of a restart year. He's losing Darius Halsey. He's losing a lot of threats at wide receiver, but seems pretty happy about his returners on the offensive and defensive line. What have you done to prepare? You've got about another week and a half, 2 weeks left to prepare for the Mighty Arabs. What have you done to prepare for them, and what can we kind of expect out of that week 0 game, the Mighty Lions versus the Mighty Arabs?
Well, it's funny because with Darius back there and everything, and all the yards he threw for last year, you expect them to sling the ball around. But actually, last year, they basically ran the ball against us. They were able to impose their will against us that way, and, they put a lot of yards on the ground that game and they didn't have to sling the ball around. They throw a lot of screens, a lot of little short things and things of that nature. But, you didn't see the deep balls much. But, I mean, they were a good football team. They've got good size up front. They got some physical guys up front. They're a couple of returning guards. Tackles are pretty good football players. Same thing defensively. But, it's like I said, we have to play fast. We have to get everybody to the ball defensively. And offensively, you know what? We didn't put a lot of points on the board last year because of, a lot of times it was middle mistakes or different things like that nature. I'll give you an example. We played Xavier. We had the ball on the 1-yard line. Penalty, bad snap. Well, so by the time it was second down, everything settled down. We're on the 17-yard line. So, I mean, yeah. You talk about some negative yardage. But, it's just growing up, being prepared, getting to a football game. And like I said, we're going to match up with them. and play football, and it should be a really good game. Really good game.
One of the other games that the Lions always look forward to will be normally would be Week 9, Week 10, and that would be against the Indians of Palm Springs High School. Of course, a team that Coach Lee is all too familiar with, not only as a coach but as a player, spending his times in the hallways of Palm Springs High School. But Coach Lee, this game has been moved from the last week of the season to about the middle of the season, Week 6 on October 7th, I believe it is. Right smack dab in, I guess, would be the now makeshift rivalry week. We mentioned before the Mayor's Cup will be played that day between Shadow Hills and Indio, the Desert Storm Bowl between Desert Chapel and Desert Christian, and of course the Red Blue game. Is that how it is called? Is it the Red Blue game? They also, Coach Murphy is going through some growing pains. He loses a lot of players, a lot of skill players for those Indians teams, most notably Will Olvera, Taylor and Tyler Hawkins, also Franklin Miller, just to name a few. He still has some pretty good players coming back, but for the most part, he is losing pretty much his heart and soul of that team over the last 4 years. I know we just mentioned you're a one game at a time kind of coach, but that game still, I know your seniors have that circled. They'd love to have that trophy back with the blue label on it. What can we expect out of that week? I know we're jumping 7 weeks ahead, but can we expect a little bit more even matchup, or what do you know about Coach Murphy's Indians, and what have they done to rebound from a terrible graduation year from a coaching standpoint, losing so many seniors?
Well, when you have a program as successful as they've been over the past years, I mean, CIF championships and semifinals finish, and they've been a really solid program. Fabian did a great job with them, and Murphy's come in and hasn't lost a step. So it's obviously, there's a lot of athletes over there. I mean, you can go over there now, even still, they graduate a lot of guys, but they have a lot of athletes. But the reality is, it's not just the athletes; they're very well coached. Murphy's a great coach. He's got a good staff. They're going to be prepared to play football, and everybody talks that we graduated this, graduated that, all those different types of things. But don't let them fool you too much. They still got some players over there. We're going to line up and play, and we get excited about that game, obviously, because like you said with Rancho Mirage, it's kind of the same kids you grew up with, kids you've played against. The two schools have their own little rivalry as far as sports and basically everything else. But you know what? We're going to get after it and play football. I'm excited about the game. We'll worry about that game when it shows up on the schedule. And it's funny because they moved all the rivalry games to. It was started with Palm Desert and La Quinta because they were saying that they didn't want to play at the end of the season because sometimes the kids get so hyped up for that game, they're not thinking about, the playoffs, that it becomes the biggest game of the season as opposed to, hey, you know what, we're going to the playoffs next round. So they moved the rivalry games and blended them into the regular season, which is probably a good idea. But it's going to be exciting, and, we'll see it. We'll see what happens this year.
Well, perfect segue. You talk about the playoffs, and we'll end on this, Coach Lee, is the biggest thing, and you and I talked about it, about the competitive realignment, the as they're calling it, the competitive playoff regrouping, so to speak. You actually benefit probably the best out of a lot of the schools, the 14, or I should say the 11 11-man football schools out here that are played. You probably benefited from the most, based simply from a statistical standpoint. You jump, you fall down technically to Division 12. 46 schools in that division. Amongst them are Rancho Mirage and Desert Hot Springs, just to name a few from the Coachella Valley. You, based on your power rankings from 2014 and 2015, would be ranked number 1 in that division. I know that's not the official preseason rankings. That's not going to be – the coaches poll will come out, I think, either next week or the week after. But based on the strength of schedule, a lot of it had to do with your success with Orlando and that really stout team from 2014. The team, I believe that was the one that went 8-2, or so that probably didn't help your cause at all. But I think actually in the long run, this kind of helps you out. What do you think of the competitive regrouping? What do you think of the division that you are in? And what do you think about having teams like a DHS and a Rancho Mirage that you, some cases, might match up pretty well against, possibly being playoff opponents?
Well, that's something we've been talking about, and a lot of coaches have been talking about this for years. They do that in basketball. They take it, and instead of your entire league going in one division, they move it around. There's some pros and some cons with it. But, from a standpoint of schools having opportunity, if you're one of the bottom schools in a league that's a really, really strong league, and you can't seem to get the kids year after year after year after year, you're basically looking at staying, pretty much in that position for years and years and years and years. And now, if you still have to make the playoffs, you still got to make it. I mean, regardless of what happens, what division you're in, you still have to make the playoffs. But it does open up things and gives other schools an opportunity, to get to the CIF playoffs, to have a chance of winning a CIF championship and those types of things. For the standpoint of Desert Hot Springs and Rancho Mirage being in our division, that's good because like the competitive level, like you said, all three of us are, probably at the same level. So that's a good matchup for us, for them, and for everybody in that division. Hey, we're all looking at teams that are similarly sized, similarly ranked, similarly, the type of competition level. So it should make for a very, very competitive football, playoff when it gets to that. Some of the other schools, Palm Springs and everybody, people say you're a victim of your success, but they're placing you where they think you should be based on the success you've had. Because you're a good program, we're going to put you in a competition level that's, relative to what you've done on the field, the success you've had, and the ability you have. So I think I like it from that standpoint. People say, oh, we're in Division 12. Don't worry about the division. You got to line up and play football week after week after week. It doesn't matter what division you're in. Somebody in Division 12 is going to be a champion. Somebody in Division 11 and 10 and all the way up. So that's just the way it is. We're excited about playing football. Yeah, it does give us an opportunity if we can get there, but you got to get there first. So, that's the excitement, though.
For the Lions, they will open up week 0 here at the Black Hole against Coachella Valley High School. Should be a very interesting matchup. Coach Lee, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you. We're going to wrap things up here. We'll let you get back to wrapping up practice. Looks like your Frost Soft team's about ready to call it a day, and I'm sure you're about ready to call it a day. You need to get some coffee and some breakfast in you. Coach Richard Lee of Cathedral City High School. We'll bring Phil back in here on the other side of the camera here. We good still in frame? Okay, we'll wrap up things. Do you have anything to ask Coach Lee? You want to come over here, Phil? Okay. So again, August 26th, they open up against Coachella Valley High School. Should be a great matchup. The Mighty Arabs versus the Mighty Lions. I'm liking the Mighty Lions thing on the shirt. I wear extra large, but just saying, right? But just to throw this out there again, the Lions do play in a very, very tough division. Now, that's the one thing that has been great about this competitive realignment has been that the regrouping across the board is still very, very competitive. You look at Cathedral City High School, based on their points alone, the ranking was 194.84 power rankings through 2014 and 2015. The other schools in that division, Carpinteria, just to name a few, La Cañada, Walnut, El Dorado, Montclair, Desert, Banning, Patriot, San Marcos, Calvary Chapel, Santa Ana, Village Christian Compton, Calvary Chapel, Marietta. Rim of the World is another big one, as well as Big Bear. I thought that was kind of interesting that you're going to see Big Bear and Rim of the World playing in the same playoff division once again, despite the fact that Big Bear has left the D'Anzoli. That's another big point that we'll probably bring up on our show next week. Phil, anything else that you want to add to before we wrap up the inaugural Prep Sportsnet Live?
Yeah, I do actually. Make sure you find us on Facebook. We're getting all of our social medias going. I believe are we on Twitter yet?
Yeah, Prep Sports _net.
Great interview with Coach Lee. I'm looking forward to the rest of the season for Cathedral City. Looking forward to seeing how we grow. We'll continue our coverage next week. Yeah, I mean, Coach Lee brought up a great point saying that it was more of a running style last season. And it's been like that, even with when Chris Romtreville was playing. Last season we had Franklin Miller was running good until he got hurt. You had, obviously, Cathedral City was running. And I like that Coach is going to change that up because we don't see a lot of passing in this league. We see a lot of running, unless, of course, you're Will O'Vara and or Darius Holsey. But it could be a big game changer. It could be something that a lot of teams are not looking at is the pass and relying more on the pass. So, like I said, if they're going to stick with trick plays and all these passing plays, it's going to make Cathedral City, regardless of record, one of the fun teams to watch this season.
Well, guys, as always, you can find us right here on YouTube. Just check out the YouTube channel, Prep Sports Net. You can search us out that way. We'll always click the link on our Facebook page. Now, of course, we had the little break in the action. We're going to splice those together, and there will be an archive of these videos for you guys to watch. We're hopefully going to be able to merge those two videos together and get the two different interviews that we had. We had the top of the show, and then we had a little technical issue, and then we will have the interview with Coach Lee. For Philip Catalfmo, I'm Kevin Pillow for KRP Broadcasting. This is Prep Sports Net Live from Cathedral City High School, the inaugural show. So glad that you guys followed us over to the World Wide Web and what we're going to be doing here. It's going to be a lot of fun. Again, you can find us online, facebook.com/PrepSportsNet. You can find us on Twitter @PrepSports_net. Find us on Instagram, PrepSportsNet. And coming very soon, you can find us on Periscope as well. Don't forget, we'll be doing a lot of Facebook Live stuff. You can find us there That's my Facebook account, facebook.com/KevinPillowRadio. And of course, you can follow myself at Voice of Reason 23 on both Twitter and Instagram. Phil, you can find on Twitter at intern_Phil. We've got one more week with Philip Katofmo before he heads off to be a member of the class of probably 2020 Grand Canyon University. So, all right, guys, we'll see you next week if you're here, wherever we may end up being, right here on Prep Sports Net. See you guys.